by policy, not by accident, can cause hundreds and thousands of people to die of malnutrition and death. And the world, the international community will applaud them and say, wow, sir, 8% GDP, what a magnificent thing you have done, sir. Teach us how to do 8%. It is very simple. I can tell you how to do 8%. Any country in the world can do it. You deprive your poor completely. You take away healthcare, you take away food, you take away education, let them die. And you can get 8%. Is that the model we want? I say that for education you need 6% in India. The government gives 3%. For healthcare you need 6% of your GDP. The government gives 2%. For food you need 6 to 7%. The government gives you 1.5% GDP. I say you spend your money on food, spend it on healthcare, spend it on education. Your GDP will be ultimately, your ultimate growth rate will be 2%. But I say a social democratic growth model, 2% growth with equity is 1,000 times better than 8% growth with no equity, no morality, no stability. That's the economic side. There is another dark side to India, and that is the side of continuing violence. Our Home Minister, P.C. Chidambaram, has declared that 1/3 of the administrative districts of India are under significant levels of armed struggle. 220 of the 650, 660 districts in India are under significant levels of armed struggle. I must pause and think, what has happened to our country? What is happening to India, the largest democracy in the world? People say you have a fair judiciary, a good free press, functioning parliament. Why is it that you have 70% hungry? Why is it that you have 1/3 of the country, the poor, making some crude homemade bombs, making some pistols, sharpening their knives, throwing their spears at the police? Why is it that you have such unrest in our country? Will somebody pause and think? Rather than stigmatize everybody, the Adivasis are with the Naxalites, these persons are insurgents, these persons are separatists, these persons are troublemakers. Will somebody pause and think, what is happening to our beloved country? A country for whom our young boys and girls have given their lives so that this country could be a free country. What is happening to our beloved country? Terrible levels of violence. And in the Punjab, the knock on the door at midnight continues. Taking you from your homes in front of your parents and handcuffing you continues. Putting the bag over your head continues. The disappearance into the maze of police stations where the parents will not know in which police station his or her son is kept continues. The torture continues. The only thing which has gone down is the bullet in the head. Ultimately, your son at some stage will be released or will be caught up in some case. For the rest of his life, he'll be fighting those things and he'll lose his mental balance. The terror in the Punjab, make no mistake about it. The killings have gone down, but the terror continues. And it is as bad as before. Because they will ruin the life of the person arrested, they will ruin the lives of his brothers and sisters, and they will ruin the lives of his family. They will never be the same again. And that is a very dark side of India which is little known. And in the areas where the Adivasis live, the corporations have come there in very large numbers to mine India's wealth. But it's the land of the indigenous people, it's the land of the tribals and the Adivasis. They have come there to mine. And they have come there with the paramilitary forces. And at gunpoint, the Adivasis are told to leave. And that is the reason why we human rights activists are fighting for the rights of the Adivasis in those areas. Violence is a continuing issue in our country. I want to quickly say two things before I finish, before I make my concluding remarks about Sajjan Kumar's case and of course about Buller's case. On the riots in Delhi, we have lost actually quite a bit. in the sense that government was not serious about prosecution, and many of the accused will go away scot-free. But there is one rascal who will get caught, and that is Sajjan Kumar, I feel. And our Fulka Saab, you might have heard him speak from time to time, our Fulka Saab, like a lion, is fighting and not allowing, any mistake to take place there. Many mistakes have taken place in the prosecutions of those people. Many mistakes. But in Sajjan Kumar's case, the eyewitnesses have very boldly spoken up against Sajjan Kumar. And God willing, if the trial goes on the way it is going on, Sajjan Kumar will go behind bars. On Buller's case, we have some bad news in the sense that Buller got the death sentence, as you know, by a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court. But I must tell you very briefly about what the senior most judge who dissented, what he said. He said Buller's case hangs on a thread. It is based solely on a confession. Not a confession to a judge, a confession to a police officer. This confession is not worth the paper on which it is written. Forget death sentence. Forget life imprisonment. Forget conviction. I would acquit this man. And he made 1 year. And he made one of the finest dissents that I have seen in a criminal law judgment. I would acquit this man. He does not deserve to remain in jail a day more. But the other 2 judges formed the majority opinion, and he has been sentenced to death. Mercy petition rejected. Things do not look good. But there are, my friends, certain things that we are planning to do. Some of those things we cannot actually say very openly in public. Certain strategies that we will follow. And it is our struggle today to prevent Buller, in the first instance, to prevent Buller from going to the gallows. And if we can, to have him acquitted and set free. It is a very uphill task. I want to end by saying that it is now today in India, we are in a situation where it is like a second national movement. I call upon all of you, I urge all of you to join in this new movement. The first national movement was to get rid of the British. But unfortunately, over the years, we have put in place people who are worse than the British. My colleague Manoj Mehta, who spoke here, I think last year or the year before last, talked about General Dwyer, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Hundreds of people were killed, thousands were wounded. But General Dwyer was cashiered and punished, kicked out of the British Army. But in India today, as I said, we are worse than the British. No question of punishment. We will give you a medal of honor, and we will give you high positions in government so that you can continue with the injustices that you have done. It is a new social movement for a new social order, where we don't want this economic model to prevail anymore. We want growth. We respect business. We respect industry, but growth with honor, growth with dignity, growth with spiritualism, growth with morality. It is not easy to do, because our community in India today, our politicians in India today are ruthless. Globalization means growth at any cost, make money at any cost, break any rule, pollute any river, cut any tree, do what you want, bribe any politician. Your mantra, your God is money. Forget morality, forget spirituality. The spiritualism of India, the greatness of India, lies in the spiritualism of its people, irrespective of faith. What we have inside us the desire to do good for society at large, that spiritualism is dying. It is there among the common people and the people who suffer injustice. We have to harness that spiritualism and move for a revival in India. Not easy, because that revival, like the national movement against the British, will take our lives. And Khalra Sahib lost his life in that spiritual rejuvenation, growth of a new India with morality and a new vision. We have to build that new nation together, all of us. Particularly important, again, as Navkiranji said, is the youth of our country must be now mobilized. They are the next generation of visionaries. They are next future leaders of India. And I want to ask you to consider sending them to India. They must come. They must come to Punjab. They must come to Dantewada. They must go to Kashmir, where everybody is shouting Azadi, Azadi, Azadi. Why? But they must come and see. They must go to Manipur. They must travel with an open mind. Nobody must tell them what they must do, what they must think. They must just come and see India. And understand the beauty of India is in struggle, that people are struggling with no resources, willing to give their lives to make India a better place. Send your young people to India. Not on any radical cause, not to do any shouting, not to do any sloganeering, not to do anything excessive. Just come and see. Come back to your roots once again. Come back to the Punjab and see what is happening. Sex selection, farmer suicides, torture matters, all kinds of issues. Environmental issues, declining water table, sorrow and suffering among certain categories of people. Come to the Punjab and see India. Because they will come back with ideas as to what they can do to help the human rights movement in India. Yesterday's paper had this marvelous picture, I want to say, about what happened in Parliament, in the Canadian Parliament. But before I tell you a little bit about that, I want to say that I am not making this statement because I want to make any political statement. This is not a political meeting. And I do not want to suggest that I or anybody of my friends are for and against any particular political party in India. But yesterday, a 22-year-old girl, Canadian girl, Bridget, when Parliament started, she stood with a sign, as you have seen, probably in the national newspaper. She stood with a sign. You know what the sign said, I don't want to repeat it. She stood with a sign, and she was quietly escorted off the stage, off the place. Creativity, rebelliousness, and self-thought of a young person, the hallmark of change of a society. And I want to read to you what she said. She said, this country needs a Canadian version of an Arab Spring, referring to the Arab Revolution taking place. This country needs a Canadian version of an Arab Spring, a flowering of popular movements that demonstrate the real power to change things lie in the hands of the people. When we act together in our streets, neighborhoods, and workplaces. 22-year-old Bridget. Khalra Sahib said something in his speeches which I want to end with that. He was asked why it is he wants to go back to India when there is darkness everywhere. He said, and I hope my translation of what he said in Punjabi is correct, he said, true, there is darkness everywhere, but I want to be like a diya. In the area around me, I will throw light, even though there is darkness everywhere. It's my duty to be a little diya and throw light. And if I can take that forward